Welcome back to Disc Media, a startup story, the podcast where I take you along our journey of starting Disc Media from the ground up. You get to hear all about our challenges and accomplishments as we either grow Disc Media or go bust. Either way, you're going to have a front row seat to hear it all. And along the way, we're going to have some special guests who share with us their wisdom and insights and what helped them along their startup journey to success. So get ready as we get into it and try to help those get better at what they do. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Disc Media, a startup story. Once again, I'm your host, Ben Olmos, and today we are going to be diving in to SEO optimization and some of the tips, tricks, and tools that we have used here to improve our SEO optimization. And I thought, I'd kind of walk everybody through a little bit of the trials and tribulations that we've gone through to get to where we are today. I think it's going to be helpful for some folks, especially if you are just getting into this world of trying to rank, trying to get your content on Google and to get heard. It's hard to break through the noise. It's hard to get ahead of everybody else out there who's putting things out. And we've had some good responses, definitely some things that we can still improve on, and we are still improving on. But I thought I'd share our journey as to what we've gone through to get to where we are today. By no means saying that we're done or that we've achieved any major milestones that says, yes, we've broken through. But at the same time, just to really kind of illustrate the amount of attention that it really takes and the amount of relentless work that it really takes to get good at this stuff. And I will say there's a ton of people out there on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. People will email you stuff. They will tell you that they can do all of this wizardry and magic. And there are certainly some tools that do help to improve some of those things. A lot of times, if you don't have any good understanding of how all of this stuff works, then yes, a lot of these services can really help. But then also, a lot of times it just comes down to understanding how these algorithms work. I'm still learning a ton myself. I learn every single week new things. The algorithms are always changing. The approaches are always changing. It's really kind of something that you have to be mindful of and keep up with. And then too, there's the other part of it, who has time to do that? And again, this is where some of those services and tools can really be beneficial. But this episode is really going to focus on what if you don't have the money to spend on all those tools? And as I've mentioned before, we're bootstrapping this thing. So what do you do when you don't have funds? How do you stand out ahead of everybody else out there? What are some things that you can do, maybe incorporate into your routines? Hopefully this information will help you. So let's go ahead and get into it. Before we get into those topics though, let's get into the numbers and where we are this week. I've given the updates and our stats and our numbers for a couple weeks now. I learned a couple things this week, and one of the things I'm going to be doing is shifting the view to really about a 30-day snapshot. So every time I'm giving updates now, it's really going to be based on a rolling 30 days. And if something significant happened within the last time that we had a podcast, I will note that. But for the most part, this is going to be kind of a rolling 30 days. And the first thing I want to start off with is our web analytics, because what I have been using mostly to report our web analytic numbers is are results that come from Google G4. And this is a great tool. However, for us, some things were not really representative of the true numbers. So what happens with G4 is that on our website, we have a cookie consent form, and this is something that is just kind of standard these days. We want to make sure that if people don't want to be tracked, then, just let us know, and we're not going to collect information about you. And as you move around the website, that's fine. Right? No issue with that. However, Google then says, okay, not tracked, not counted. And that's not necessarily representative of the people who are really hitting our site. Now, even though we're not going to collect any information that we normally would, and again, we use information like this to really help us fine-tune our content, understand the people who are visiting us, making the content better. But again, you choose not to have that information shared, fine. Also, some people are using web browsers that don't track that stuff, or they're using plugins or tools that say, hey, ignore where I go on the web. And that's totally fine. Our consent form allows you to opt out of that stuff. However, I still want to know, what are the total number of people who are hitting our site, right? And so we do have those metrics. And what I'm going to be reporting moving forward are the metrics that we get from our website, what we know about the people who are hitting our site, not necessarily what we know about the people, but just the fact that you came and, how many pages, we're seen by people, not anybody individually. And again, I know there's some people out there who are very sensitive about privacy, and you should be, but we don't collect any personal information unless you share it with us, for example, signing up for the newsletter. But outside of that, we're not doing that. We're not doing deep dives. And by the way, instead of bootstrap this thing, I don't have the funds to really do any big data projects around that kind of stuff anyway. So website traffic, before I was saying, we've almost reached 1,000. In reality, when we use this new approach, this updated approach to things, we're just over 1,000 people visited the site in the last 30 days, and that's really good. Of those 1,000 people, we've had 1,900 page views, 1,300 sessions have been created from the traffic. All of that, I think, is really good. We're moving in the right direction. We did have a couple spikes over the last couple weeks, and I think that we're going to see a little bit of a downturn in some of those numbers, but still, we are well over 1,000 visitors on a monthly basis to the site. Now let's get into our social media. And again, the part of doing these videos is to help promote that social media presence and get more people engaged in the stuff that we're doing, aside from just SEO optimization, which is really where we've been hanging our hat for the last several months. But now we're going to be talking about what our social media traction is and really trying to put some focus and attention on that. For LinkedIn, as I've mentioned before, we have fewer posts. Last 30 days, we've had 658 impressions on the posts that we've made. Hopefully, what I will say though about the LinkedIn posts, we are getting per post more impressions now that we've tapered off on the number of posts that we're making. And I think this number is probably a little bit more important to me, because what that means is that when I was putting out posts before, I could get like 20, 30 impressions, and then that was it for the post, and then it just kind of slowly dies off. Now, and especially, by the way, the videos that we've been doing have been getting a lot more traction. So very good to see that. Even though the number of posts have gone down, the number of people who are actually seeing what we're posting is starting to go up. So I think that is good. When it comes to Facebook, now, I actually have 3 Facebook pages that I post our content to. And so what I'm doing is I'm pulling all of those 3 pages together. One of them is from my consulting company that I started years ago. It's a page that kind of grows slowly. So I always throw my content onto that page just because it's the one with the most followers. And it's the one that tends to get a little bit more engagement than the daily pitch page or even the disc media page. So all those pages combined, 202 likes over the last 30 days, had a reach of about 68. Again, not great numbers, but Facebook, it's just a little hard for us to break through there. We published 107 posts across all those pages, made 77 impressions, 23 video plays. And given that we're just starting back on video, I think that's not too terrible. And a couple, likes and reactions to some of our stuff as well. So that not bad. As far as Twitter is concerned, again, we only have 24 followers on Twitter. I would say that the Twitter posts, we get what we can out of them. We've had 35 total posts over the last week or so. And of those, we did get about 5 retweets. So, not too bad there. When it comes to YouTube, remember last time I said we got nothing on YouTube. This time we actually have 3 video views. No views of the podcast, but at least some views of some update videos that I've been putting out there. So that's not bad. When it comes to TikTok, 787 views over the past 30 days, 10 likes, 0 shares, but that one comment that I mentioned before from the gentleman trying to promote his business, saying that he could help us out. So that one is still hanging around. When it comes to Spotify, we've had 15 plays of podcasts over the last 30 days. And again, trying to do more with the podcast and using this content to kind of promote some of that. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more there. And then with the newsletter, 266 subscribers so far, and that number's been going up. Over the past 30 days, we've added 30 subscribers, and we've only lost 11. And, there's a little bit of a reason for that. I'm still kind of analyzing whether I think what my hunch about those unsubscribes are actually coming from, but, it is what it is. So that is the rundown on all of the outreach we do with all of the tools when it comes to the website, social media, the newsletter, the podcast, all of that wonderful stuff. And again, I share this information with you guys partly because I'm hoping that you might like what we're doing here and will say, yeah, I'm going to follow you. I'll share your stuff. But also to just kind of share for those who have yet to embark on this journey of trying to build an audience, the energy, effort, what it takes, what the numbers look like. You go on YouTube, you go on TikTok, and you see these people and they're like, this blew up and that blew up and they have X many followers, and you see the popular people. And yes, it is true. I mean, you can do it. A lot of people can do it. I'd venture to say anybody can do it, but it's work. And my purpose is to give you the behind the scenes of what the work is. Okay, with the social media update given, let's touch a little bit on some of the articles that we did last week. Hopefully you guys will check these out. One of the first articles that I want to talk about is around AI and the proliferation of people using AI for homework. And, as an educator, as somebody who works with students, all year, and hearing some of the feedback that I'm getting in academic meetings, you have some faculty absolutely hate AI. You have some who actually, who support it and encourage it. And I am in that second camp. I support it. I encourage it. I think this is a tool that people need to learn how to use. And the reality is that AI, in the article that we wrote, actually helps to support learning and retention. And there's a lot of really good examples of how we can use AI to actually improve knowledge and retention. So thought that was a really good article and thought could be helpful for some of my academic fellows out there, or maybe even some parents who are a little concerned about where their child might be applying AI and whether or not it's going to help them learn. The next article we have is about really transitioning from boomers who are retiring in the workforce to Gen Z who are up and coming in the workforce, and that handoff of knowledge and information that has to occur. We have a new generation that is rapidly entering the workforce who has their own thoughts and opinions about things, have their own styles and their own way of doing things. And it is, in contrast, much different than the retiring generation. And so how do we bridge that gap? How do we bring those two thoughts together and allow these folks to transfer information and knowledge in an effective way? As a business, this is really important because your business thrives year after year, generation after generation, and it's important to make sure that there is a good handoff of information when it comes to those phase outs and those changes. I hate to say phase out. Sounds terrible. We're not phasing out boomers by any means, but we are passing the torch, if you will. The next article that we had was about restructuring and organizational change. And again, some of the topics that I've talked about a lot lately have been on AI and, how AI helps in business, because there's a lot of talk out there about some of the damages that can be done and some of the conspiracy theory kind of thinking and some of the fear out there around AI. And again, I am one who is cautious. I think that you need to be eyes wide open. I think you need to know a lot about it before just kind of making some off the cuff assumptions about things. And so when we talk about AI and using AI as a tool in business, a lot of times businesses are approaching this as, right, how can I save on labor? How can I save on capital? How can I get more done and use less people? And really what we're finding is that, yes, AI is a great tool to be leveraged, and it's something that's beneficial for business. But at the heart of every business, and what remains at the heart of every business, are the people. And yes, we can use AI to make things better and improve efficiency, but we still can't ignore the people. And that's a little bit of what that article gets into. Lastly, I go back to my fundamentals and a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is around positive psychology in the workplace. And again, for those who may not be familiar with PERMA, it's an acronym in positive psychology that stands for positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And these are kind of the tenets, the building blocks of positive psychology. This article kind of explores ways in which we might be able to leverage AI to enhance some of those elements as we think about positive psychology in the workplace. So that's the article rundown for this week. Check those out. I would greatly appreciate it. Hope that you guys enjoy them. And again, if there's something you read that you like, share the link with a friend. Click on it, like it, comment it, however you choose. Sharing that content helps us, helps the algorithm, brings more attention to us. I'd be greatly appreciative of that. All right, so next let's dive into SEO and SEO optimization and all of the things we've learned about SEO since we've started this venture. So what is SEO? SEO stands for search engine optimization. And at its fundamental meaning, what it does is it helps you get found with search engines, right? And there's an approach to doing this. And what I knew about search engine optimization when I started the Daily Pitch and what I've realized it actually is and how it works and what it takes to rank, it is so much different than what I initially learned. So when I first came into it, I knew that you had to have keywords embedded in your articles in order for them to get recognized, right? But that really is only the very first step. Now, there are some tools that help with that. Two of the tools that I read about a lot were either RankMath or Yoast. And the tool that I ended up picking for our purposes is Yoast. And, there are fans on both camps and, we can argue back and forth about which one is better. And I'm sure both sides are going to have some really good points. We chose Yoast, right? So, and I'm not at all upset about that, right? It's been very beneficial and helpful for us. So what Yoast does is it helps to optimize the titles, the meta description. It helps to make sure that the words that we do choose as our keywords are optimized in the article, that they're used an appropriate amount of time. It helps us make sure that our headers are properly tagged so that they get the most attention. It also makes sure that any images or graphics that we use are also properly tagged. It really kind of analyzes everything that you're doing in your content writing to make sure that it is most optimally positioned to rank in Google. Now, here's something I learned. Does that mean it will rank in Google? Not necessarily. Usually what you do is you try to choose a primary keyword, and that primary keyword will appear in the title. It will also appear in the first paragraph, in the meta description, and scattered throughout the article. The other thing that you try and do is maybe pick a secondary keyword or two to enhance or give you a greater possibility of having those combination of keywords get found. And while that's part of it, it isn't necessarily all of it, because the other thing that's important is to make sure that the keyword that you're actually using is something that people are searching for, right? If you pick a keyword that nobody is actively looking for on Google, you could SEO optimize your article around that keyword, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people are still going to find the content, right? It would have to be something that people are actually looking for. We'll get into why, even if it is something that we're looking for, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to float to the top. We'll get into that in a moment, but let's just stick with the fact that we need good keywords, right? And so initially, when you don't have a budget, there are, again, I mentioned this before, there are tools where you can use program, software, services that will help you get better keywords. There are things like Ahref, SEMrush. Two of those tools are the Cadillac of search engine optimization. They really give you some deep insights, not just about your keywords, but about your page, about competitive pages, about other keywords that other people are using, where your keyword opportunities are, where your backlink opportunities are, all of that good stuff. Again, don't have the budget for those kinds of tools. So one of the things that we ended up doing was starting out by going to Google. And, one of the things that Google does is if you start typing in something, it will autofill. And what that autofill does is give you the most often searched for terms based on that keyword. So that's one strategy that we deployed early on, and that helped a little bit. The other thing that we did was looked at Google Trends and see what keywords are trending. The problem with Google Trends is that it's really difficult to kind of find a keyword, like put in a keyword and see what the trends are, see what the metrics are. The information is a little bit challenging to understand. It really doesn't incorporate well. It gives you a lot of the trends in a very high up fashion, and it doesn't necessarily give you depth, right? It gives you all the highlights, but it's really hard to discern from that information whether or not it's a good keyword. And again, it could be a good keyword, and it could be something that a lot of people are searching for. But remember last week when I talked about page authority, and I was excited about the fact that our page authority had jumped up? Well, the other thing is that if you have a hot keyword and all of the other websites are covering that topic and have a greater domain authority over you and have a greater depth of content and also are leveraging Google AdWords and all kinds of other stuff, you're still never going to get seen. You're going to be pushed all the way down to the bottom because you have all of these other people who are much better at it pushing you out of the way. So even if you do have a good keyword, sometimes that's not enough, right? It has to be a good keyword with good search volume. And as SEMrush talks about, they get into keyword difficulty. Now, I know a little bit about SEMrush because I actually have one of our former board of advisors, Matt Sankum, talked about Matt before. He has shared with me some insights about what SEMrush is, how it works, and it does some really snazzy stuff for you. But again, it's a little price prohibitive for where we're at right now. So even though it's a great tool that could give us some really good insights on the kinds of keywords that we can use, whether it's a difficult keyword to rank against, what the volume of that keyword is, unfortunately, we just can't see that level of stuff. One tool that I did find that did help for quite a while was called Ubersuggest. Now, Ubersuggest is kind of the budget-friendly tool for small business, for bloggers, vloggers. I think if you don't have a huge amount of money to invest in a tool like SEMrush, Ubersuggest is probably a great alternative. And by the way, if anybody knows of any others, ears wide open, would love to hear about them. But we did use Ubersuggest for a number of months, probably a little bit over a year, and that really did help improve our SEO optimization. It really helped us to rank. And in fact, one of the keywords that I used early on was around text-based social media. And it was a keyword that I embedded an article with, and come to find out, we actually had a journalist find that article and used our article in something that they published for Forbes. So that was kind of cool. And we've actually had, now 2.5 years in, we've had a number of articles that have popped up, backlinked from other people's, blog posts or articles or news articles, things like that. So our strategy, I would say, is working. It's how we're really breaking that 1,000 visitors a month now. And hopefully through social media efforts like we're doing here, we're going to kind of push that even further. But, at the end of the day, when it comes to SEO, what it really takes is daily work. You have to go in there day in and day out and put the work in. You have to look up keywords. You have to see what resonates with people. You have to use them in your articles. You have to then track the performance of that article to see how well it's done and, what are the things that people picked up on. When you post something in social media, trying to, again, use the same keywords that you used in your article to embed in your post, because, the theory being, if people are looking for this keyword, they are probably also looking for it in social media as well. And using the combination of those two things ultimately does help. So our journey with SEO optimization and finding the right keywords, it's been a mix of doing the best we can with the tools that are out there that are free, paying a little bit for some of this stuff to get better knowledge and understanding, maintaining things, like especially for what we do, we're posting things, putting stuff out on the web, maintaining our subscription with things like Yoast, because it is very handy to know whether or not we are on track or off track, not just when it comes to the keywords that we're using, but the readability of the articles. There are times when we might put an article out there that the readability score is not necessarily very high, and that too affects your SEO optimization. There are some other things, by the way, too. Didn't get too deep into this, but how quickly your website responds, whether or not you're caching images and using any sort of tools that improve the responsiveness and the speed. And that's some of the back end stuff that I've done with the website that I've mentioned in previous episodes. Making sure that you have a site directory published, that Google kind of knows where to go look for all of your sites. That's one of the things that Yoast does as well, is it produces a sitemap and constantly gets that in the hands of, Bing and Google and all the other search engines, so they kind of know what the content is on the site. Lots and lots of different things that kind of go into it. So it's a balance of keywords, of website speed, of what we know about the website that is actively published out there, the keywords themselves, how much they are being searched for, how difficult it is to get ranked on those keywords. Even, comes down to what are the AdSense cost per clicks on that keyword, right? Ideally, in a perfect world, what you're looking for is a keyword that has a lot of search traffic, is not difficult to rank for, and the cost per click that you have for that word is not extremely high, right? Because the higher it gets, and of course, again, think about the longevity of that. How long is a keyword going to be inexpensive, yet also highly searched for, right? So it's always a balance of trying to find that sweet spot of where all of these things come together, right? And it's tough, just like, improving your social media standing, finding the optimal balance of all of those elements, certainly very challenging. By the way, if anybody out there happens to have any, tips, tricks, insights, things that you've learned, things that you know of, find some of the information maybe that I've shared is, off track. Again, we're building things with the best knowledge that we have, learning every day, doing new things, tweaking things all the time. But if somebody else out there has any other ideas or thoughts you'd like to share, would love to hear them. All right, folks. So that is it for this week's episode of Dist Media, A Startup Story. I would like to thank everybody who has been paying attention, who has been receptive to these videos, who's throwing us a like, who's telling their friends, who are sharing, who are jumping on the newsletter, who are, well, nobody's really subscribing to the podcast yet, but we got some listens, right? Some people are listening, so that's all good. I just appreciate the fact that you've hung in with us as long. Hopefully this information is helping you with your own personal project, with a business that you're working on. That is what we are here to do. We're trying to improve knowledge and insights to help, again, as I always say, managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do. So that is the main mission and goal here. Next week, we are going to get into what it is like to start a learning platform, because one of the other things that we have done here, we haven't really talked too much about it yet, is what is Daily Pitch Academy and why did I start it? What is the purpose of it? What are we hoping to do with it? We've got one class out there now. By all means, if you guys want a free access to a class on social media marketing, you can head over to the dailypitch.news. There is a ad there, front page to the right, gives you an access code of how to get that class for absolutely free. So check that out. Next week, we're going to be getting into what is Daily Pitch Academy. What's that all about? By the way, something too that is going to be coming up next week. Very excited. Not going to reveal too much yet because over the next week or two is really when I'll have more information to kind of roll out about it. But a really exciting event that we're going to be attending next weekend, I should say. Hope to meet a lot of new people and talk a lot about what we're doing and, also just meet other people who are kind of in this whole game that we're in. So anyways, thanks so much for checking this out. Hope you guys have a good one. Thank you for hanging in, and we will see you back next time. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to Disc Media, A Startup Story. This podcast was produced and edited by Ben Olmos and is a production of Disc Media Corporation. If you're interested in learning more about anything you heard on this episode, please reach out to us at podcast@discmedia.com. You can also get more information about this and other episodes or information about our guests by checking out dailypitch.news, our business and insights publication focused on helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do.